This generation's greatest author and poet, writer of A Streetcar Named Desire and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, unashamedly writes of a woman's strong wants and a man's strange needs.
Something horrible happened to that girl last summer. Some dreadful, traumatic experience of some kind. What?
Suddenly Last Summer certainly is something. This contemporary review sums it up the best. It's a story of sex, perversion, sadism and cannibalism played out in violence and emotional extremes. Miss Taylor is the woman who has seen her rich cousin, a degenerate poet named Sebastian, torn to pieces by a pack of starving children. Yeah. Even from today's point of view, this sounds like an extremely unique experience, which makes it even more astonishing that the story made it to the screen in 1959, and that it was nominated for a couple of Oscars. On the one hand, you might think, sure, Tennessee Williams's plays were very popular and it's not surprising that this one was turned into a movie as well. But his other controversial plays had the luxury of being critically acclaimed, award-winning Broadway productions that already had a lot of buzz and were therefore easier to accept as movie material.
Tennessee Williams' Pulitzer Prize-winning play unfolds with a shocking impact and uncompromising realism that makes its author the most talked-about dramatist of our day.
It won the Pulitzer Prize, the Critics' Award, the most revealing play ever written.
New York, London, Paris, Brussels, Rome, all cheered it. It's an even greater motion picture.
But Suddenly Last Summer did not have the same origin story. In fact, it didn't even make it to Broadway until 1995. As a one-act play, it originally premiered off-Broadway in 1958, together with another one-act play, Something Unspoken, under the title Garden District. Therefore, Suddenly Last Summer did not have the same prestige as other Tennessee Williams plays at this point. Turning the story into a Hollywood production was therefore a huge risk, but one that paid off. Some critics praised the movie's daring themes and overall execution, calling it weirdly fascinating, while others attacked the obvious topics and over-the-top nature of the plot. However, such condemnation and quotes like, "I deplore the garbage that is now being splashed on our screens. The trash and filth now going onto American screens will lead to a crippling censorship unless motion pictures quit telling dirty stories to our kids," by John Wayne, obviously made everyone want to see it, making it the 7th biggest box office hit of the year. But this success not only came due to the unusual story, but also the bona fide movie stars in the leading roles. It's no surprise that both Elizabeth Taylor and Katharine Hepburn were interested in this project, as Tennessee Williams was well known for writing great parts for actresses that would usually also get awards attention. But beyond that, these were also performances at crucial moments in both of these actresses' careers. Elizabeth Taylor was not only one of the most famous movie stars in the world in 1959, but also one of the most notorious. Her affair with Eddie Fisher, his divorce from Debbie Reynolds and their following marriage still caused headlines all over the country. So for her, continuing to prove her talents as an actress with another difficult part in another Tennessee Williams play after Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and other prestige pictures was a necessary step to avoid her private life taking over her professional career completely. Working with Williams' material and doing it really well helped her to achieve recognition as an actress when she was seen by many only as a homewrecker. For Katharine Hepburn, Suddenly Last Summer was a return to the screen after 2 years' absence. It was her first movie since Desk Set with Spencer Tracy, after which she had worked extensively on the stage. And it's not surprising that she chose this movie as her return to the screen. Being based on Tennessee Williams, it was a great role for her, one that was sought after by many other actresses of a certain age, including Bette Davis. Within her film work, Suddenly Last Summer was also a transition to a new phase of her career. The 50s were dominated by her spinster roles in movies such as The African Queen, Summertime and The Rainmaker. Maybe older spinsters, but still objects of affection. Suddenly Last Summer marked the beginning of something new. Katharine Hepburn as a mother. And what a way to start.
This sounds like vanity, Doctor, but really I was actually the only one in his life that satisfied the demands he made of people.
Of course, Katharine Hepburn's mothers were rarely what you expected. She could be warm.
I have to be happy for her, Matt. And I am.
But she could also be this.
I don't much like our children.
Still, the spinster phase was over and she entered what columnists called the Ethel Barrymore phase of her career, which is a bigger compliment than you might think at first. And it's true that she was no longer the object of affection, but played women in either settled relationships or with other problems than her love life. But in this grander scheme of things, Suddenly Last Summer was a really perfect transition. Violet Venable is not a spinster, but she also seems to reject any kind of relationship apart from that to her son, and since both her husband and her son are dead, she's also marked by loneliness and confusion. So she's a mother and a wife, but without a husband and a son.
There's no word. Lose your parents, you're an orphan. Lose your only son, and you are nothing.
Even if critics were skeptical of the movie as a whole, they still praised the work by both actresses and considered them likely Best Actress nominees, calling them both excellent and brilliant, and stating that the picture survived its dirtiness due to their tour de force performances. Elizabeth Taylor was highlighted for her splendid work and her compelling emotionalism, ready to burst into flames, and critics wrote that she gave a performance that will rank with the screen's all-time classics. Katharine Hepburn was praised for triumphing in a plum role and for investing her character with a sly insanity, restrained until she cracks up, and that her haughtiness was perfect for this role as she alternates between icy and melting with charm. However, when award season came along, Liz put herself into a comfortable lead with various Best Actress awards, including a Golden Globe, while Katharine Hepburn didn't win anything for her performance in the end. Still, this is not too surprising. If you ever saw the TV version of Suddenly Last Summer with Maggie Smith and Natasha Richardson, which follows the actual play, you notice that the roles of Violet and Katharine are initially balanced very evenly. Both given big monologues, both sharing equal importance, with the role of Violet maybe even being a bit larger than that of Katharine. The movie version, on the other hand, shifted this focus and made Katharine the clear central character of the story. And while Katharine Hepburn played her part rather quietly and controlled, Elizabeth Taylor is allowed to go very big. I mean, really big, therefore leaving a bigger impression on most audience members when the story is over. In the movie, Elizabeth Taylor plays Catherine Hawley, a young woman who suffers a nervous breakdown after witnessing the death of her cousin Sebastian, and who is locked up in a mental institution while her aunt tries her best to have her lobotomized to make sure that the truth about Sebastian's death will never be revealed. While the character of Catherine is a naturally showy part, the movie version of Suddenly Last Summer actually increased the level of difficulty, and also made it harder for Elizabeth Taylor to make sense of it all. The stage play focuses only on the one evening when all characters come together and wait for Catherine to tell the story of what happened to her cousin Sebastian. While it is often mentioned that Cassie has lost her mind, the character itself has a clear recollection of the traumatic events, but has been shut away for months and did not see either her aunt, her family or Dr. Kukrowitz before the story takes place. This compression of the plot makes many scenes far more straightforward than in the movie.
Sebastian and I used to speculate on how that family of Neanderthals could have produced a girl as rare as Catherine.
These people are not blood relatives of mine. They're my dead husband's relations. I always detested wretched thing. My dead husband's sister and her 2 worthless children.
And by opening the plot up for the screen, stretching out the time frame and letting Katharine interact with other characters far more frequently, it was necessary to give specific reasons for dragging the truth out for so long. In this case, it's explained that Katharine is suffering from a loss of memory in regards to Sebastian's death. This puts Elizabeth Taylor in the difficult position to constantly give long monologues that hint at everything, to remember a lot of persons and various events in connection to Sebastian and even his death, but not the ultimate question of how.
You babbled some story about Sebastian and how he lived and
Died. In a place called Cabeza de Lobo.
But she handles these contradictions extremely well, even if she's sometimes too sure in the part she does know, considering how dangerous it is for her to know everything.
we were decoys.
Decoys?
For Sebastian, he used us as bait.
However, you cannot deny the full commitment of Elizabeth Taylor in this role. While many of her performances suffer from her very thin voice, she handles the dialogue of Tennessee Williams with astonishing ease, adding a sense of poetry, doom and regret to many of her scenes. And she also manages to overcome the fact that the movie makers make no secret of their desire to exploit her popularity, which is why Katharine walks around like this in a mental institution, and she had to do this scene clearly for one reason alone.
I came out looking naked.
Why did he do that? Do you know why he did that?
Yes. To attract attention.
But even with all this, Elizabeth Taylor constantly displays her desire to truly lose herself in the part of Katharine, making her scenes opposite Montgomery Clift particularly engaging by never revealing just how aware Katharine truly is, teasing him when she finds the opportunity to, constantly moving between insanity and understanding, working very hard to make sense of Katharine being both the most lost but also the most aware character in the whole story, and observing everything going on around her.
I don't understand what hate is. I don't see how anyone could hate and still be sane, and I really do think I am sane.
Besides this, Elizabeth Taylor also works very well opposite the other cast members, displaying a cool affection for her family and portraying both anger and fear to her aunt.
Aunt Violet, I am disturbed. Don't you think I have every reason to be?
There's often a rebellious attitude in her characterization, acting in a way that is expected by everyone, being told so many times that she is crazy that she has accepted the premise without feeling like it.
Of course I accused him unjustly. After all, I'm insane. It's the sort of thing an insane woman would do.
But even if her dedication is impressive and often even overwhelming, Elizabeth Taylor also occasionally exaggerated her part. She shines with her monologues, and whenever she is asked to add an aura of mystery to her part, especially in more quiet moments, but fails when she needs to engage with other characters in a more straightforward manner.
He bores holes into the skull and operates on the brain!
Still, it's impossible to deny the effect of her final scenes, revealing the truth about what actually happened to Sebastian. Using the memory of the death of her husband Mike Todd, she lets Katharine relive her lost memories with an ever-growing intensity, creating an unforgettable moment of terror carried by her voice and face alone.
I don't know how he still ran. He never ran, but he ran and he ran and he ran where it was quieter and emptier.
What was emptier?
The light, the sky and the light.
I would not say that Elizabeth Taylor gives the kind of character performance she would a couple of years later in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Her work in Suddenly Last Summer always remains a movie star performance, but still on a very high level, realized with clear precision and focus. She maybe did not surprise us on the screen as she took a great part and gave an accordingly great, but also expected performance without adding any true dimensions herself, but you cannot deny the sheer intensity she brought to her character. Still, even if the performance of Elizabeth Taylor made the bigger impact in 1959, for me, there is someone else who walks away with this picture. As already mentioned, the part of Violet Venable feels a bit secondary in the movie version of Suddenly Last Summer compared to the play. Besides building up the role of Katharine by focusing on the loss of her memory, even one of Violet's speeches was given to her.
I got back with cable, Mr. Venable critically ill, stop. Once you stop, needs you stop. Immediate return advised, most strongly stop.
While they were there, word came. Mr. Venable was dying. He had to see her.
And she chose to stay?
She chose to let her husband die alone.
However, the character of Violet still benefited from the restructuring of the plot. While she's much more straightforward in her intentions in the play, she's allowed to be a bit more subtle here. Well, as subtle as a story like Suddenly Last Summer allows. In the hands of Katharine Hepburn, Violet Venable is still clearly more what would be described as crazy than her niece Katharine, but her wealth and influence allow her a certain behavior without being questioned. Katharine Hepburn never emphasizes the mental instability of Mrs. Venable necessarily, but plays her as a woman who lives in her own world and acts accordingly, who is used to get what she wants and also used to have everyone accept every word she says.
As you see, there was no mystery, no matter what the girls said at the time or any other time.
It says the body was somewhat damaged in falling. Where did he fall?
On the ground. Where else do you fall when you die in the hot sun?
And in playing this attitude, this loosening grip on reality combined with a strong sense of self-assuredness, Katharine Hepburn created one of the most fascinating characters of her career. And probably also had the best entrance in film history.
Well, it seems that the Emperor of Byzantium, when he received people in audience, had a throne, which during the conversation would rise mysteriously in the air to the consternation of the visitors. But as we are living in a democracy, I reverse the procedure. I don't rise, I come down.
Katharine Hepburn perfectly embodies this type of woman, rich, ruthless, domineering, and with a borderline incestuous affection for her son.
I know it sounds hopelessly vain to say, but we were a famous couple. People didn't speak of Sebastian and his mother or Mrs. Venable and her son, no.
Like Elizabeth Taylor, Katharine Hepburn uses the dialogue of Tennessee Williams to her advantage. But while Elizabeth Taylor gives it the expected poetic quality, Katharine Hepburn plays with her lines like a musical instrument, being threatening and lovable within seconds, leading the story and the character from one place to the next. Like a flock of birds, she changes her direction from one moment to the next, never exaggerating her performance, but bringing a matter-of-fact quality to her scenes that create a startling, almost frightening effect.
Whenever you enter the brain with a foreign object,
Yes.
even a needle-thin knife,
Yes.
in the hands of the most skilled surgeon,
Yes,
there
yes.
still is a great deal of risk.
But it does pacify them. I've read that. It quiets them down. It suddenly makes them peaceful.
Elizabeth Taylor might always have the grander scenes opposite her, but Katharine Hepburn effortlessly dominates these conversations by sheer presence and the sheer conviction of Mrs. Venable's righteousness.
Not even God can change the truth that we were nothing but a pair of...
Doctor!
It's the truth!
See how she destroys us with her tongue for a hatchet. You've got to cut this hideous story out of her brain.
And she also elegantly goes through her scenes opposite Montgomery Clift, slowly wrapping him up in her own point of view, but also keeping a clear distance, almost like a hunter waiting for the right moment to kill.
And you'll be happy to know that at this very minute, my lawyers are working on the Sebastian Venable Memorial Foundation.
Her famous monologue about the sea turtles is probably the closest Suddenly Last Summer comes to a true horror movie, simply due to her ability to tell the story with a heart-stopping tension.
And I looked and saw the sand, all alive, as the new-hatched sea turtles made their dash to the sea while the birds hovered and swooped to attack. And hovered and swooped to attack.
And even in her final scenes, she never takes the opportunities of the script for going big, but again almost underplays her scenes, making her exit just as memorable as her entrance.
Oh, we are lucky, my darling, to have one another and need no one else, ever.
Katharine Hepburn's Violet is not the kind of villain you either love or love to hate or pity. Instead, she's a strange but also unique presence that overwhelms everything around her without suffocating the movie or the other characters, leaving a lasting impression that makes you want to know more but still gives the audience everything it needs. Tennessee Williams himself was overall very happy with both actresses. He famously thought that Elizabeth Taylor was maybe miscast and not believable as a woman who did not know that she was being used for, quote, something evil, but she still rose above it with her acting abilities. Of Katharine Hepburn he said, Kate is a playwright's dream actress. She makes dialogue sound better than it is by a matchless beauty and clarity of diction, and by a fineness and intelligence and sensibility that illuminates every shade of meaning in every line she speaks. She invests every scene, each bit, with the intuition of an artist born to her part. So Suddenly Last Summer is a strange but also fascinating picture with two intriguing female performances that beautifully show two different approaches to the material, both succeeding in their own way, even if one of them succeeded more. And the next nominee is